Alrighty, everybody, it is 8 o'clock Eastern Time. I want to use these 75 minutes oh so wisely, a refreshing change, right? Happy Monday. I hope everybody has had a really great start to the week, and more importantly, I hope that everybody is going to have a fantastic week. If I have anybody in the session who is observing the Jewish holidays this week, Happy New Year. If there's any other holiday I'm not familiar with, well, then I wish you the best, and please let me know what I don't know. So in any event, okay, let's power forward. Okay, so here are a couple of announcements that I want to share with you. Try a little new animation today. Our next tutorial, which is, of course, already posted to the Hive, and I know I have mentioned this several times before, but I just want to let everybody know that our next session will be on Friday, October the 4th. That's this Friday. I just got the memo. Tomorrow's October at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. This Unit 1 bootcamp is going to go for a good solid 60 minutes. Depending on questions that I may get, might push a little bit more. Hold on. You guys are not able to hear me? Hold on tight. Let's, kind of defeats the purpose, I guess, then of me doing the sound check. Can you guys hear me okay? Oh, never mind. Sorry. Okay, no worries. You can hear me. Okay. Super. Okay. Today's goal, we have to finish 2. We are going to begin Unit 3. There is going to be a lot of content. Fun stuff, in my opinion, I'm going to power through. I may not, this is going to be weird. You have to, I guess, kind of see what's going on my side of the monitor. Not that you can, but trust me. I may not have my eyeballs as glued to the chat as I have in the past, only to kind of power through content and power through my message, and then I'll follow up on the chat. If anything has either been missed or maybe not responded to in the timeliest of fashion, know that I'm going to come to it. I promise, promise, promise. There may be some things I think I might park just in the sake of, time strategy, but no, I'm going to absolutely come to everything because every thought and comment and contribution is super important. But any event, we are going to carve into Unit 3. That being said, we're ending a unit and yet beginning a unit. So what does that mean? This is our opportunity, and by that I mean really yours, but to please take a look once again at those first opening pages, the Roman numeral pages at the beginning of Unit 2. Where you had all of those responsibility points. And I had said way back when, take a look where you feel comfortable, take a look where you don't feel comfortable going into a new unit, because the goal is to turn those frowns upside down. So revisit all of those responsibility points. Again, they are in the earlier pages before the table of contents, the Roman numeral pages. So I want to see that anywhere that you thought, I don't feel good, I want you to feel good now. And then last but not least, hey, listen, do yourself a favor, don't show up next week. I won't be here. Not because I'm lazy, but because, well, that and. It is, believe it or not, our mid-study break. I have no idea where the time went, but we are now at the midpoint. We are not quite at, well, kind of we are at the midpoint in our studies. I am going to revisit the syllabus next week. It's a good time for all of us to regroup. I'll talk about it again on Thursday, but the point is, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, next week, I'd like to plan a week ahead, you have Monday and Thursday off. And the next group too will have their nights off. So don't come, we won't be here. So just mark that in your calendars if you aren't already familiar or maybe it escaped you. Okay, that being said, let's do it. Page 113, we're stretching this to page 152. Let's rock and roll. A little bit of a recap. Feels like, honestly, it was about a good week and a half ago, at least in my opinion, when we met last. And we ended speaking about reliability and validity. And a little bit more specifically, we were speaking about how can we test recruiting and selecting procedures that we put in place before we actually execute them to a pool of candidates. How do I know, for example, that my pre-employment questionnaire or test is doing what it's supposed to do? So we spent a lot of time, and deservingly, speaking to and really elaborating, if I may, on those operational definitions. And a little bit more specifically, no doubt you can take a look over on page 111 to refresh your mind if you need. we ended up talking about predictive validity and concurrent validity. So we fulfilled all of those promises, which are great. But one thing I said actually about a week ago, in fact, and I told you there's an IOU debt, is predictive validity and concurrent validity blended together make up, voila, here it is, folks, criterion-related validity. So I'm just diving right into the deep end here. So the uniform guidelines, if you're not already too familiar, they're basically best friends with the EEOC. So imagine this. Let's say, however, but an allegation of suspected, perhaps assured, discrimination has taken place. And a candidate is going to reach out to the EEOC, and they're going to say, oh my gosh, I wasn't given an opportunity because, okay, fill in the blank. Well, the EEOC and uniform guidelines to make sure all of our procedures are in uniform, that being like with the law and ethical and humanitarian practices, they're going to say, hold on, we're going to investigate this allegation. One thing that they are going to look for as a first preferred line of defense, if I may, is criterion-related validity. So this brings back a little bit of something that I mentioned, I think it was about a week ago. Criterion-related validity explains how well a criterion variable, so something that is quantitative, something that we can measure. I'll put here a number sign just for the sake of showing something quantitative. But how well a criterion variable can be used to predict an outcome when blended together with something non-quantitative. So that being something that is more qualitative. So I'll put a smiley face. You don't know how happy I am. You can just generalize and say I'm happy. So this is my way of doing quantitative plus qualitative. So if you recall, and I think maybe I need to refresh my memory, about a week ago, when this key buzzword was brought up, I had mentioned that do a little exercise, put your palms to the ceiling. And I said in your left palm, imagine the quantitative things you do by which I can measure you in this course. Strictly attendance and practice test scores. That's the criterion, actual factuals. Numbers don't lie. But then in the right hand, there's, if you will, more of the behavioral, soft things, not such technical, that I can observe and I can render judgments on, but I can't measure it, such as, if you will, the quality of a thought-provoking question. No two great questions are necessarily the same, such as, if you will, your attentiveness. I don't know if you're attentive right now. For all I know, somebody's watching TV. For all I know, somebody walked away from their computer, or somebody's on the phone, or somebody's searching Instagram. By the way, check out J-Lo if that's the case. Anyhow, so there's the quantitative and the qualitative. When you put your hands together and you mesh these quantitative and qualitative things, then we can make predictions. So when I see your attendance is impeccable, your practice scores are impeccable, then I blend it together, well, with your questions and your thought-provoking, I would say like arguments maybe that you put forward, and answering some of those end of section questions, and maybe even answering any discussion questions I post to the buzz, or your contributions, or the way you're engaging. Then yes, I will feel comfortable to make a prediction, truthfully, on whether or not I predict you will pass your exam. And to that respect, because of such firmed up and polished up prediction procedures, criterion-related validity allows us to offer you a very aggressive guarantee. That being, you know what? I'll give you back your money if you don't pass your exam, so long as you do these quantitative things. So that's criterion-related validity. Now, for fun, I'm also going to share with you guys in my lesson recap, so in the buzz, in your hive, I'm also going to share with you a really great link to a Wikipedia post about criterion-related validity. I'm usually a little bit skeptical about Wikipedia, but I do think that this article was actually rendered or written up pretty well because it talks about how, for example, when you have actual math grades by a high school performer, it can help to actually predict performance in university. It's a very interesting read, but I think it's going to further supplement. But we like criterion-related validity because, again, when we can assess in terms of a candidate, their performance, the things that we can measure, be it during pre-employment or post-employment, if you will, after they got the job, blended together with, well, you know what, they were just so charming in the interview. All of these things come together like PB&J, peanut butter and jam for some people. But because there's also actuals and there's no, if you will, subjective judgments, then this is what the EEOC is going to use as their first, if you will, preference for proof. I see a comment came in. Hold on tight. I promise I'm going to come to it. Well, if for any reason there is no, if I may, like actual factual criterion by which the EEOC and the uniform guidelines to rely on, and if they need to investigate a little bit further, then their second preference is going to be based on content validity. Now remember, content validity is face validity. Face validity is basically, yes, judge a book by its cover because that's all that we have to judge on, such as auditioning. If you audition to, I don't know, be a lifeguard and yet you don't know how to dive, you know, maybe in terms of like life-saving procedures, well, you know what, proof is in the pudding, you can't do it. But failing any type of actual factual deliverable, that content, if you will, then the third, and not really preferred line of defense in terms of any type of investigation, will be construct validity. But remember, construct validity is limited because it's just psychological constructs, and it may not always be relying on that. Okay, let's take a look at a question. Why would EEOC investigate this, such as criterion? Okay, so let's say, for example, I'm making this up off the fly, so I hope that this makes sense in your ears, let alone out of my mouth. Let's say, for example, I go and I apply for a job tomorrow, and I passed every pre-employment test. Those are factual, actual results. Let's say as well, there is some sort of a job sample test. And maybe it was more so, if you will, on my performance, such as my ability to deliver. That's kind of subjective and maybe open to interpretation. What I mean by deliver is, let's say, my presentation, my training. If I don't get the job, and let's say I claim it is because maybe my gender, maybe my religion, maybe because, I don't know, right now I'm really into wearing snakeskin shoes. But if it's on any basis of discriminatory grounds, I may go to the EEOC or uniform guidelines, again, they're best friends, and say, you know what, I've actually been robbed of an opportunity that, frankly, I am absolutely qualified for. I wasn't even, you know, considered to be a contender, or anyways, all these things about me were somehow channeled to be used against me. Now, again, proof is in the pudding. My results, I scored a 98% on my aptitude test. I came in, I don't know, in the 10th percentile of my knowledge-based test. Just doesn't make sense that I was eliminated. Now, sure, maybe I just wasn't the preference. Sure, maybe there was another candidate that was better. But if I have some solid ground and some prima facie hardcover evidence to prompt such an investigation, that would be, you know, the case. Okay, great, super. All righty then, so let's continue to power forward. Oops, I think I pressed something. Nope, everything looks good. Okay, so a little bit of maybe backpedaling a little bit from Thursday, plus a little bit of what we've got going on today, but here's your question. If the scores for a large sample of current employees on a new mental ability test are highly correlated with the scores on two well-established mental ability tests, then the new test would possess what? Content, concurrent, predictive, construct validity. Okay, superb. Excellent. Okay. Normally, this is where I have the opportunity to do a little bit, if I may, of a dissection, if you will. And it always starts with identify the root, i.e., identify the stem of the question. What is going to make you or break you? Well, that doesn't need to happen here. Everybody got it right on. D is the correct answer. Fantastic. So clearly you picked up on speaking about that psychological, that mental, if you will, type of test. So you definitely, looks like you were able to narrow down to the correct answer just even based on that cue. Very well done. Perfect, perfect. Okay, so let's talk about some legal and privacy issues. So here's the thing. The EEOC, remember, they're just saying we want to give everybody equal opportunities in employment. They always urge employers to basically only collect the information that you need. And it's also a matter of timing. When do you need it? Ask yourself why you need it. So here's a fantastic list of some of the things that, yes, perhaps in time we may need, but just eyeball this and just be like, when do I need this and why? Do I need it during employment? Do I need it during application? It's interesting. Now, not that I want to get too carried away, but I think, as always, it's important to kind of, immerse into even, a real life example that perhaps you're going to borrow from somebody else. So let me give you a very dated, but I think applicable story. I'll give you the short version if I'm capable of that. So a gajillion years ago, truthfully, before I went on hiatus from the profession, so this was BC, before children, I was a pretty active member in my local regional chapter for my professional association. And I remember that there was a case. Now, this was just something that was happening in our province, and we as a chapter, we were more just discussing it to kind of, evolve our thoughts and, our muscles, if you will, in the profession. I actually went on maternity leave before, I guess, this all kind of came to resolution or what have you with the courts, and I never even looked it up. But the moral of the story or the case was this. There was an individual who had applied for a job, submitted a resume. On the resume was strictly the name and phone number. This is actually before, if you will, the oh-so-rage of email address, so I believe that there was an email address as well. And then the employer had said, we would also like you, please, to complete an application. The application, we all know, is just a duplicate, if you will, of a resume, or at least ask for a lot of duplicate information. It's just, that is a legal document that belongs to the company. A resume really isn't a legal document that belongs to the company. In any event, the candidate did not want to include her address, nor, of course, was her address also part of, if you will, the header on her resume. And so the potential employer, the company in this case, said, well, your application is not complete. Please complete it. She said, no, it's complete. I'm opting not to give you this information. You don't need my address while I'm a candidate. That takes a lot of courage to stand up for what is right. Anyhow, long story short, and this is what really got prompted, she felt that she was alienated from an opportunity, she was being discriminated against. Company insisted, well, we cannot process candidacy if all the information is not complete. The argument was, it is complete. Everything you need, my academic experience, my volunteer experience, my work experience, my knowledge, my skills, my abilities, technological, if you will, what's the word, whatever, IT knowledge, savviness, whatever. Everything you need to even invite me for a first interview, you have. You don't need my address. You're not coming for dinner. And so this actually went, like I said, to civil rights. The argument, well, here's finally, the long story short, the argument was from this applicant, sometimes based on somebody's address, we, just as society, can generalize a little bit more about that individual's, be it culture or religion or socioeconomic status. And she didn't want to be pigeonholed. Look, open for debate, right or wrong. I can kind of see that point of view. But again, so it's just saying, I guess, in terms of legal and privacy, and also a matter of collecting information at kind of like a strike time. Because the truth is, they didn't really need the address, I think. Okay, I'm being asked a question. Then how would you be able to mail W-2s if you don't have a mailing address? So when somebody is an applicant, you're not going to be mailing that. So sure, if that person were to pursue and even get hired, then of course, we're going to need all their information, marital status, yes, of course, full address, in which case 110%. But in this case, the applicant was saying, you don't need my address because you don't need to associate like more of me on a personal level. Yeah, I can see it too. Yeah, just to apply. This was strictly just completing an application. And she felt that her candidacy was withdrawn because she just didn't give them an address. She's like, you're not sending me a holiday card. You don't need my address. Anyhow, interesting. Maybe I should look it up. From 1856, what was the outcome of that? Okay. Let's take a look over onto page 120 at interviews. So again, do you remember when we first started, I guess, this latter half of the unit when I said, regardless of whether or not you are a recruiter, I'm going to assume you have perhaps been recruited. So in either way, shape, or form, if my assumption is correct, we've all been through an interview, regardless of which side of the table we have sat on. Let's just go through some of the very basics. And this is going to be, if I may, very textbook, might be boring, but as well, it's a little bit of a refresher just to kind of maybe polish up your knowledge, polish up your chops. I don't predict, though, in any exam, HRCI or SHRM, you would be asked such a straightforward question such as, which of the following best, I don't know, illustrates a situational interview? If you get a question like that, you have a horseshoe in your pocket. But I do think it's important just to get a little bit of a visual or a grip maybe on different types of interviews in case you should see a scenario-based question. In any event, let's take a look. So first and foremost, we have patterned interviews. Patterned interviews are, true to its name, where a pattern, i.e. a very strict agenda or itinerary, has already been set. There's predetermined questions. Let's just hope these questions were crafted on the basis of the job description and the job specification. But in this case, the interviewer doesn't really need to be the best at thinking on their feet or, frankly, anything other than following the agenda and taking pretty thorough notes because there's already a tight pattern. Now, no two interviews, in my opinion, if I may, are the same, which makes, generally speaking, interviewing not very reliable. But, like I said before, interviews aren't going anywhere because they are still very essential. Patterned interviews, however, because they're so strict to the agenda, might be more of a reliable version. Then we have the semi-structured interview. In other words, our behavioral-based interviews, where, yes, we do, of course, have, if you will, structure to the way that the conversation is going to go. There's going to be fewer questions because here you're going to have a very competent, skilled interviewer who knows how to do probing questions. So while you may only have maybe 4 questions, again, from this very competent interviewer, those 4 questions may have spin-offs, which might double it. That's why it's called like a quasi-structured or quasi-patterned. If there is no, if you will, past performance, in other words, already precedent-setting behavior, then of course that interview becomes a little bit more of a situational. It's easy to segue. Anybody who's got experience, you're thinking, oh my gosh, you're like, preaching to the right choir here. Or of course, some interviews might just be situational in nature. Again, just saying, if you're in this situation, how would you deal? Then we have targeted selection. Targeted selection are very similar to semi-structured. However, while these are behavioral based, they're more closely linked to particularly targeted dimensions. And these targeted dimensions are established through the job analysis. Of course, then we have the non-directive. In my opinion, many of you may agree, you're welcome to disagree, but I think it takes a very, very skilled interviewer, a very skilled conversationalist to conduct a non-directive interview. And to my experience, non-directive interviews are really necessary when you're hiring for a recruiting position, because both interviewee and interviewer know all the games, right? Like we know every trick that is up every sleeve, because from one professional to another. So in this case, really no two interviews are necessarily going to be crafted the same. A non-directive interview is really just an open-ended discussion. However, here in this case, right, the interviewer needs to still be able to make sure that the focus is remaining on, the mission at hand. So very, very unstructured, very, very natural. In this case, the applicant is going to be dictating the conversation. It's a good time. Of course, we have our stress interviews, our virtual interviews, which are oh so popular, group interviews, which I think are great, not only efficient, and then of course board or panel. However, we talked about inter-rater reliability. So again, lots of cautionary signs with any one of these different types of interviewing techniques, pros and cons to everything like we've discussed before. Let me know if I'm going too fast. Let's take a look at pre-employment tests. And so we segue all the way over. We're making a lot of progress onto page 128. A lot of fantastic and a lot of different, if I may, variations of pre-employment tests. And what I love specifically as well is when you now also inject the job knowledge test, and when possible, even the job sample test, and blend the two if the opportunity allows. Very, very key. Because again, what are we talking about? We're basically talking about, once again, proving that the candidate is the right fit, and also just basically like an audition in many different ways. The purpose of pre-employment tests, of course, is to provide objective and standardized measures. So whether it is aptitudes or interests, abilities or personalities, whether it's honesty and integrity, we want to ensure that the candidate that we're about to select is going to be successful on the job. So again, it's a matter of basically doing almost like a little needs assessment or analysis, saying what's important to us, what is absolutely positively without a doubt critical, where we cannot take any risk. So let's basically vet people through these tests. It can't always just be our gut feeling and our judgment, especially when you have multiple different observers really walking away with different choices, as we've discussed. So in selecting pre-employment tests, they should be linked, just like interview questions, but they should be linked to job descriptions and job specifications. Now, often pre-employment tests can be developed in-house. It really depends on if there's this knowledge, the talent, the skill set, the resources to do it in-house. Otherwise, not uncommon by any means to outsource it. What's key in any pre-employment test, especially those that may be crafted in-house, and especially job knowledge and job sample tests, that they need to possess strong content validity. Remember, content validity, judging a book by its cover, that face validity. What I see, I'm going to draw the conclusion is what I will get. Okay, question time. Tell me again if I'm going too fast. The type of interview that requires the least training for effective use is what? A structured interview, a semi-structured interview, an unstructured interview, or a stress interview? Which type of interview requires the least amount of training? You can infer something here. We do not need to train or train much the interviewer. Okay. I'm going to rule out two distractors that it looks like you guys would be in agreement with. C and D. So this is a really good start. So of these two, if you haven't answered yet, or maybe if you want to change your answer, which requires the least amount of training, that being training of the interviewer. No, Q is correct. I'm just teasing. I'm with you on Q. Okay, fantastic. So we do see a lot of people weighing in with the same response. I do think I saw a classmate or a couple of people maybe, throw in a little bit of a spicy response, so let me just elaborate why. But the correct answer is A. Reason why it's A and not B is because the structured interview, i.e. the patterned interview, is on a very, very tight agenda. So you're just asking the questions. Do you like Oreos? Yes or no? Okay, move on to the next question. Doesn't matter how that person responded. There's no probing really going to happen. So we don't really have to train that interviewer to probe, generate discussion, really poke around what to look for. Just take the notes on the conversation. Whereas with a semi-structured interview, in other words, behavioral-based interview, that's where, you know what, there is opportunity to ask a follow-up question. But it really depends on how that person responded. But you really need to know, what am I honing in on? So there's a little bit more, if you will, training and competency shaping with regards to B, which makes, again, A the correct answer. So very well done. Fantastic. Assessment centers. So assessment centers, if you aren't already familiar, be it firsthand or otherwise, these are actually usually reserved for identifying managerial potential, and often as well in-house. So this is where, really we're going to be putting internal, if you will, applicants through, a series of tests, for promotional purposes. So we have here a series of activities that can often occur between like 2 to 3 days, because they'll take a while. And the predictors of the job performance are assessed here because a lot of these activities are really linked to the actual real activities that this candidate would be expected to do on the job. So they're very, very reflective. So what we have here, let me just pull out my little highlighter. First of all, we have in-basket exercises. So this is where that candidate would read and review and respond to correspondence. Then, of course, there are group discussions, a really great way to see, if you will, how one counteracts towards another, complements, conversations or discussions or viewpoints with one another, shows, if you will, respect to one another, upholding the culture, the way in which we treat members of one another, and so forth. There's individual tests, which we spoke about just moments ago, intelligence, personality, aptitude, and so forth. Interviews. The interviews here are going to be focusing more on career development and career planning. Because keep in mind, we're also right now putting managerial candidates under the microscope. Managerial candidates are those that really we're investing succession planning into. So they're a little bit of a different, if you will, target. And then, of course, business games. Really, really cool different types of gamification. No joke, could be video exercises, computer simulations, a lot of fun like that. All of these activities are observed and, assessed, I was going to say obsessed, are observed and assessed by observers who have been thoroughly, thoroughly trained. So again, we don't want any observations to be subject to intra-rater problem deficiencies. There's a combination of assessments that are going to be made. And two, to that respect, we're looking for reliability and validity. We're looking as well for consensus amongst the observers. So again, we don't want any inter-rater types of poisons. Let me just take a look at a comment that has waited so patiently. Oh, an in-basket exercise. So an in-basket exercise is, put it this way, imagine you are in the basket. The basket is, if you will, the job. So let's say, I'm just going to, again, pick this out of a hat. Let's say you are a candidate for the VP of HR. So they're going to put you in the basket of the world of the VP of HR. And as such, let's say you are going to receive an OSHA citation. How will you respond? Not just to OSHA, but as well internally throughout the organization. So, I mean, again, I just made this up off the fly, but it is, if you will, as real world kind of simulation that's focusing more so on your reaction by means of correspondence, but certainly not limited to. Let's see. Have you ever performed an in-basket exercise? Not on purpose. Not consciously that I know of. Oh, we have a classmate that has. Okay, fantastic. So you know what? That might just be a really, really great maybe conversation. I'll allow you guys maybe to pick each other's brains. And certainly we can do a little bit more research. In fact, I will make a note to myself because I haven't actually, ever been subjected to it, but I'll be honest, I haven't worked for, I'm going to say, very big, if you will, formal, large HR teams. But it looks like we have classmates that are saying, I have. So if you would love to share, or please throw it into the buzz, and then we can absolutely get a conversation going in our group. Sorry, forgive me, I'm just writing myself a note. You just gave me an idea, Bobby, so I'm going to see what I can find. Yeah, absolutely. And feel welcome once again. Guys, you can use the social media platform of the Hive, in other words, like the learning space, to definitely interact with one another and respond to one another and, get that out there. Let's see, our classmate is saying, did tasks that were in the role that I guess you were applying for, that you were a candidate for? I'm just going to finish your sentence. Is that okay that I did that? Let me know if I'm wrong and I'm completely out to lunch, which is very possible. Okay, fantastic. But again, it's really putting people through the motions to assess, are you that managerial candidate that is going to do the job to the utmost highest level of perfection as we expect? Okay, let's take a look, please, over onto page 137. Oh, that's weird. Okay, not like me. Thank you. Okay, the spot that I'm usually on is more like a stain. Hey, that's a really great example. So take a look at that. Government, which I'm not surprised given how thorough they are because of all the bureaucracies and all the channels that somebody has to go through. Government certainly, will rely on assessment centers. And I imagine, how can I say this properly? They're thorough and political. Okay, as long as they're not sponsored by anybody in the Ukraine. Okay, boom, boom. Just kidding. Okay, page 137. Let's take a look at expectancy charts. So this can be confusing because what you see in Exhibit 19 and Exhibit 20, to the blind eye, if I may, are identical. So it's a fair question if anybody's thinking, so what are the differences? Well, before we even take a look at the differences between the expectancy charts, let's just regroup as to what are they? Why do we rely on these? Well, they're called what they are for a reason. Here we have these bar graphs, or frankly, any way to graphically display this data, remember that from the end of Unit 1, to assess what can I expect from this individual. Now remember, we're talking about a candidate. We haven't hired this person or promoted this person. They're just a contender. They're nothing other than perhaps a very highly considered consideration. But what we are expecting out of this graphic display is really to show us, first of all, is the test that we put the individual through valid? Is it giving me what I want, which is an on-point expectation? And then as well, tell me, what is the likeliness that this person will be successful? So when we're relying on criterion, actual, factual, quantitative measures of whatever we put these people through, that's how we're going to pump it in. Okay, so now let's take a look at these two exhibits. Exhibit 19. So notice in the book, I have nothing up on the slide. I want to kind of give you guys a little bit of diversity in terms of where your eyes are going. Exhibit 19 is an individual expectancy chart. I just want to know what I can expect out of the individual. I'm going to take all of their performance by all of the things that I can measure that I have subjected them through during the recruiting and selecting process. And now I'm capturing it, booyah, into a table or into a chart, excuse me. What you see running on the y-axis, so the vertical, are the test scores. I want people, to, let's say, for example, to be in that higher 30 to 35%. Why? Because per the x-axis, this is the level that we can expect them to be amazing. So people who scored 30 to 35%, then we're going to say, yeah, you know what? They're gravitating towards the left to be absolutely phenomenal on the job. I can expect superior things from them. Okay, so people who scored in that range, yeah, might be greater considerations. Different, however, from Exhibit 20, just below it, is the institutional chart. So for our institution, for people to contribute well to the organization, for the company, i.e. institution, to do well and to thrive. So thinking larger scale, thinking more, if you will, outside the box, not just being successful in the job, but contributing to the health, wealth, prosperity of the company. These are, for example, as you see vertically, the cutoff scores one must earn. Again, for us to expect them to be a great contributor. That's the key difference. It really rests in the y-axis. Is that so well with everybody? It took me a long time to understand that. And more so like kind of visualize it. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I take it back, I take it back. Everybody okay? Everybody's okay. I don't see anybody. Yeah, okay. Okay, great. Background investigations. So a whole series of background investigations that can certainly be done. Certainly they don't all come necessarily grouped together. Any organization can either opt not to do these or of course choose one over the other. There are pros and cons to any one of them. One thing is important. Actually, 2 points here I should say are important when we talk about background investigations. One, they need to be administered in a non-discriminatory fashion. You subject one candidate, you subject all candidates. It becomes a norm. And the second thing as well is, as we discussed before, hold off till the end of the selection process because these are pretty costly, especially if you're doing multiple different versions. Okay, question. I'm being asked, what if you were to fail an institutional expectancy? I think that if somebody were to do well in an individual expectancy, but perhaps not well in an institutional, I would think that it really depends, on how much, if you will, that particular role or individual or both are going to be contributing overall to the organization, and it might also speak volumes towards that company's culture. That's a hard call. Personally, I think if I'm going to put on my entrepreneurial hat, I don't think I'd be okay with that. But I think as well, it depends on what the scope is of the particular position, to be honest. I mean, in any way, shape, or form, we all contribute overall to the institution, but some have a little bit more of a pivotal role, and some may not. Yeah, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Okay, let me think of something. I remember actually my very first job out of school, no, my second job, but the first one I took seriously, out of school. I remember I was pretty good friends, to be honest with you, with the person. It's kind of like a primitive type of business that they were operating. Long story. But anyhow, there was still, if you will, a traditional, if you will, mailroom. There was an in-house travel agency or travel consultant. To the best of my knowledge, these things are kind of unheard of now, but maybe also live in a little, I live in a bubble. But anyhow, be that as it may, I was pretty good friends, or I became pretty good friends with the person who managed the mailroom. And that individual, I remember actually, was always telling me, you know what, I don't really have like that big of a contribution, if you will, to the success of the organization. Not like operations or logistics or store design and marketing. But yet that individual was very, very critical, if you will, as a support role to maybe some of these departments that did, I think, have a bigger impact on whether or not the organization from a bird's eye view was successful. So that could be a difference, if that makes sense. Kind of made sense in my head. Let me know if I didn't explain that well. Okay, so perhaps as that's marinating, let me ask you another question. We're about to wrap this unit up, finally. A chart showing the probability that an individual will be a successful performer given different scores on a test is called what? An individual expectancy chart, institutional expectancy chart, individual probability chart, or applicant prediction chart. Okay, super. Lots of responses coming in. I want you to please remove yourself from, if you will, this particular lesson. I'm sure you wish you could. I'll find you. And even maybe remove yourself from the learnings, you know, all your independent reading and all your hard work that you're doing. And I want you to maybe think of yourself 4 months ago, or maybe think of yourself 4 or 6 months from now. Reason being, if you were to remove all of this knowledge that clearly you have, and you were in the exam, and you were faced with a question like this, which is arguably one of the easier knowledge-based questions. Oh, we should all be so lucky. I bet, correct me if I'm wrong, but I just want to give you another test-taking technique, if I may. I bet you would read this and go, okay, individual. We're talking singular as opposed to plural. Therefore, you would remove B. B is plural. So even if you didn't have all this knowledge, i.e., you know, definitions, explanations, you could rule that out. And then you might think, yeah, D doesn't feel right because it just doesn't roll off the tongue. That just doesn't seem like it belongs there, which would be a good assumption as well. Individual expectancy or individual probability. Now, I'll be honest with you. In terms of what this chart is delivering us, they kind of mean the same thing. I mean, the only word that breaks these two apart is expectancy versus probability. The expectancy chart is telling us what the probable outcome would be if we went with this candidate. It kind of means the same. I mean, we could argue it either way, shape, or form. And if you didn't know better, because maybe you didn't study or maybe, okay, fine, it's going to escape you in time, this is where one of these techniques might work against you. The technique being, here's the word probability. So you would think, oh, well, I should go with C then. Probability, I see a match. It's almost like the card game memory. So that's why I think as well, it's very important to practice these terms or practice these words, or even if it's like, okay, how can I use this in a sentence? Or, you know, because in this case, the correct answer, as you guys all identified, is A. What do we expect out of the individual? Now, probably they'll do amazing to fulfill our expectations. So if that helps, there's just a way to kind of, I don't know, bring the dots together. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell in your ear. Blame it on the coffee. Okay, everybody okay? This is it, guys. Perfect. Page 146, please. Almost, sort of, kind of. No, I got ahead of myself. So references. I would love, I normally would like to open up the can of worms and say, hey, what's your opinion? But unfortunately, in the interest of time, I can't do that. But I think we all will have varying opinions, and yet we all might agree, you know, to one way, shape, or form. Truthfully, okay, I get to do this because I have control of the microphone, and I can't help myself. I think references are not the wisest use of our time, because the truth is we are probably only be given names and phone numbers of people who have already either been scripted or, you know, are ready to say something positive. I think references can, however, be used very, very well if that conversation with the referencee, I guess, is going to be treated like a behavioral-based interview. If that person will participate, which they may not, which brings us to new key buzzword, qualified privilege doctrine. So this doctrine basically says a former employer really can only describe can only describe the former employee based on work records that they have that they can basically support and back up. Often this is going to be, yes, this person was reliable. Yes, this person maintained, an immaculate time and attendance schedule. If, for example, we're just getting a little bit of background noise. I'm just going to mute all of our attendees. Sorry about that. If, for example, let's say I were to go and ask my former employer to be a reference for me, and a future employer possibility were to be told, yeah, Jen never showed up, and then I didn't get the job for that reason, and I found out that that was the reason why, I would definitely go back to that employer and be like, first of all, you did what? And second of all, prove it. You show me these records. It's really preventing an employer, and I'm going to say by means of vicarious liability, that organization from in any way, shape, or form being accused of and or charged with slander, defamation, or anything of the sort. Factual, relevant information. But for all of those legal reasons, slander and what have you, a lot of companies don't want to participate in references. They will say, yes, I will confirm employment from this start date to this end date. You have to confirm their job, perhaps maybe one or two primary duties or responsibilities. I'll give you the job title at most, but that's it. I don't want to hurt anybody from getting future opportunities, but at the same token, I can't put my neck on the line. Being asked, what about backdoor references? Yeah, absolutely. It's not to say that they're not being done, but they may not be credible. That's the only thing. Due to defamation, correct, yeah. Anyhow, this is one of those areas that it's like neither here nor there. Like, I got to be honest with you. I don't do references. Like, not that I don't participate. I'm always happy to participate. Yeah, I never call candidates reference. Anyhow, that's just me. Okay, negligent hiring. Boy, do I have a fun story for you. Here's the thing. What is negligent hiring? When an employer knew or should have known of an employee's dangerous, if you will, being or capabilities, then should there be a poison work environment, should there be any type of, if you will, constructive discharge or otherwise, then the employer, probably amongst many other charges, can definitely be sued for negligent hiring. I'm going to give you a short version of a story. Gosh, I'm never going to get through my own content. I just talk too much. Okay, so I know somebody that knows somebody, but anyhow, it's not such a distant, like 7 degrees of separation. This is a reliable story. So anyhow, somebody that I know had been transferred internally to another business division. So still working, if you will, for the same parent company, the person that I know was able to be in touch with a lot of, his former, if you will, coworkers and subordinates and what have you. So what he found out, from all these people and, having just built good reports, is that his successor was actually very verbally abrasive, aggressive, inappropriate, didn't have tact, and not only soured what was otherwise a strong team, but I would say poisoned the culture of that, the climate of that particular team. In any way, shape, or form, there was one individual who felt that she was constructively discharged. In other words, the work environment was so poisoned, and unfortunately, HR also did not react. Makes us look bad, but apparently did not sufficiently react to the grievance that she put forward, that she felt she had no other discourse but to resign. Now, as luck would have it, enter sarcasm, her spouse is an employment lawyer, so he went for the jugular. In any event, from what I heard from the person I know, what actually transpired was this. The chief of that specialty, so that executive, had already narrowed down who he or she wanted to hire as the successor, and basically said to HR, like, do whatever you got to do, make it happen. HR put that successor, or the candidate, through a number of different pre-employment tests, everything under the sun, and that person failed test after test after test. When HR apparently reported to that executive saying, look, your incumbent not going to work out, the executive said, make it happen. So talk about a backroom deal, right? Anyways, so HR, I guess, kept, test, retest, maybe an alternative kind of test, you name it, just to make sure that this person looked good, quote unquote, on paper. So in this case, it was a case of negligent hiring. And apparently, from what I understand, this person had a very foul mouth, was, like I said, very abrasive, absolutely inappropriate, everything like that would make your and my teeth sweat. And again, so this individual, this former employee, sued for negligent hiring, constructive discharge, like everything, like I said, apparently. So there is an example for you. Let's see. We have, sorry guys, I'm just reading the last comment that came in. You can read along with me. What? No, it doesn't sound like that. I don't think so. That was a personal incident. I read it really quickly, but this sounds like this was a personal incident. If you had, oh my gosh, you have wow, you have better stories than I do. Unless it can be deemed that your organization should have known of this kind of, I'm going to say, mentality which drove that behavior, I don't believe so, especially because that is a personal incident, and sometimes we hold different personas. Wow, sorry, I don't even know what to say. Yeah, I can't imagine. Now, there's a personality test if that individual was, subjected to it, but not every employer necessarily puts everybody through, I'm going to call it the works, be it for affordability, be it for, I guess, seeing the need. Oh my gosh. Well, I believe so, because again, if, for example, okay, I'm just going to use your example here. If, for example, the employee had tied up a fellow employee and that fellow employee brought charges against the employer, then yes. But in this case, it was a private incident. In this case, the victim or victims, in case there were to be more, especially like in a civil suit, but isn't going to file a charge with the employer because they don't work for the employer. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Just gave me the shivers. Medical exams. We could have physical, we could have drug, again, so long as they are administered in a non-discriminatory fashion. And as well, I would recommend, of course, that this be reserved for the tail end of the process because they're pretty costly. Now, physical exams are absolutely legal and, of course, have to maintain all the confidentiality and privacy. Yeah, totally legit. Okay. Oh, wow, that sounds mortifying. I don't even know what to say there. Okay, let's take a look, please, over on page 145, because here, basically, we're going to take a look, as we wrap up this unit, we're going to take a look at how you can sit back and basically say to yourself, wow, do I spend a lot of time and energy and money to make sure I get the right person in the right place at the right time who possesses the right KSAs to drive the business in the right direction? Am I doing a good job at this? Am I making good decisions? So remember, we always want efficiencies and we always want effectiveness. So how do we answer that otherwise difficult kind of series of questions? Well, there's 3 ways to assess if, frankly, you're making good decisions. First of all, you can generate the metric of the selection ratio, and that you see at the bottom of page 145. How many applicants have been hired to how many number of applicants did you have? These ratios are going to vary by industry. They're also going to vary by job category. But if they are like really extreme, then wowzer, maybe there's a way to tighten up. Again, you can do a stop, start, continue. Then there is the validity coefficient. The validity coefficient speaks volumes back to our wonderful world of having a correlation. if our instruments, I'm going to use plural, have a positive correlation between all the information we collect during the prediction stage versus all the information we collect when they're in the job, be it during probation or otherwise, then you know what, I'm doing something right because I am hiring well. And then there is what is called the base rate for success. Flip the page for me, please, over to page 146, and let's take a look at that. I have to refresh my memory if I have a slide on that. No. So, nose in the book, please, on page 146. Take a look at Exhibit 21, please. And you see the 4 quadrants. Now, you also have, if you will, a line running horizontally smack through this diagram, which, of course, breaks up, if you will, top half, bottom half. And that line is the base rate for success. Just listen to those words. This is the base that a company will accept as, if you will, successful. So they really want everything to be ideally at or above that horizontal measure. Everything below is less than desirable because it's below the base rate. Now take a look as well what's running vertically in the middle of the diagram. Again, breaking up now, if you will, the left side versus the right side or vice versa, but also helping to break out these quadrants. This is, if you will, the middle of the road in terms of prediction, kind of like, is how one might feel about a candidate. Not exceptionally ecstatic, oh my God, I have to hire that person, and not terribly kind of like, nope, never going to happen. It's more like the, I'm indifferent. So running on the y-axis, we have performance, where middle of the road is, I'm not taking anything less than this. And then running on the x-axis is how strong we feel in making the prediction. Now remember what you rely on to make a prediction. As candidates, we have to sell ourselves to make people feel comfortable with their prediction. Okay, let's take a look, please, at these quadrants. In quadrant 1, top right-hand corner. Oh, actually, sorry, let me back up. Excuse me, rewind. You see the oval shape that is in gray? This is, I like to call it the egg, but this is the validity coefficient. How well our prediction matches their actual performance. How valid is really our decision making. Now you see that this oval is tipped to the top right-hand corner. This is as high as it's going to get. We want to live there. So let's take a look. Again, we'll go back to quadrant 1, top right-hand corner. This is where you've made the right decision, meaning everybody who falls in this quadrant, first of all, they are above the base rate of desired performance. So they are being successful. Check. And as well, they sold themselves amazing during the predictor stage, i.e. during recruitment and selection, because you were able to say, yeah, this person's going to do fantastic. So this was the right decision to hire them. Let me know what questions you have along the way. Right below it, bottom right-hand corner, in quadrant 2, here we have someone who totally oversold themselves. They gave you a positive impression, strong predictor data you collected, but they're liars. It was all false information, or it was a false, if you will, lead. Because let's say you gave them the job, and then in the job, they did not perform well. Look, they're below the base rate. Ew, bad decision. They gave us a false positive. So we made an error. Shimmy over to the left with me. Now we're in quadrant 3. Here, you have somebody who really didn't sell you during the interview stage. So you had like very, very low levels of good prediction. So you're like, I'm not going to. And to that respect as well, their performance would have been low. So this is where you made the right decision not to pursue them. Sweet, smart choice. And let's go just above to cell 4. This is where somebody did not sell themselves well during recruitment and selection. Maybe they don't wow the panel during the interview. But maybe you gave somebody the benefit of the doubt because you saw this raw hidden potential. You couldn't put your finger on it, but you're like, I know it's there. And I can understand that they can't shine like the top of the Chrysler building because, I'm kind of an introvert too. So sometimes, we can be compassionate when we can identify with ourselves, I guess. And yet their performance, because you gave them a chance, was through the roof. That person may have given us, as recruiters, a negative first impression, but that was false because they're amazing. So we made, actually, I guess in this case, a good decision. Okay. Yeah, me too. Does that so well with everybody? Make sense? Because to look at it is kind of like, false what? Okay, fantastic. Okay, super. Let's bring this baby to bed or to a close or whatever that expression is. Where does the time go? Alrighty, so we offer somebody an opportunity. We shake hands. Very, very important, of course, to always know, I think, where strengths or muscles are. Negotiating employee agreements, it all comes down to this. From an organization standpoint, we want to maintain equality. We'll talk about that in Unit 4. We want to maintain as well, ethics in our negotiations, ethics, if you will, with our total rewards, but also understand who's got leverage, who needs what. Gather all the information. So some people, that being a new candidate, so the talent, might know they have the upper hand. The employer is hungry for them. They might also know, which an employer may not necessarily know, I've got some other job opportunities. It's okay if I walk away from this. And to that respect, the employer also might have some other candidates that it's okay. They'll go to candidate number 2, which is also just equally as fantastic. But it's a matter to understand, sorry, this is my original point, what matters to people, which only you can gather while you're trying to find that fit of chemistry, which comes from conversations. If, from an employer's perspective, I've been in this position, you understand what matters to the candidate is maybe not making another $5,000 a year, because let's be honest, after tax, pizza money for some. But it might be a matter of having, if you will, flexibility and alternate work arrangements. So sometimes it's okay to be creative that doesn't necessarily have a tremendous cost, at least not when it comes to like taxes and what it looks like on paper. So always, want to go in on any negotiation really having the full picture. Okay, guys, let's wrap this up. The usefulness of a predictor is determined by what? The selection ratio, level of the job, or reliability? Validity coefficient, selection ratio, reliability. The base rate of success, the validity coefficient, the selection ratio, or the job description, job specification, validity of a predictor. Fantastic. Many of you can do, might be doing what I am doing, which is flipping over textbooks, flipping over binders. We are about to begin a new unit. Alrighty, final answers, please. Going once, going twice, 3 times. So the correct answer, yes, is B. I'm being asked, why is it not? Oh, not B, sorry. I'm so sorry, forgive me. It is C, I'm sorry, I got, my eyes got confused. It is C, base rate of success, because we need to have that horizontal, the validity coefficient, that is the egg, if I may, to validate our procedures to our outcomes, in other words, our selections, and of course, the selection ratio, because that tells us how efficient we are. If we had 1,000 applicants from which we only selected one, and maybe it is, let's say, for a customer service representative to work the drive-thru at Burger King, that ratio is not so strong. So this tells us, yes, about determining efficiencies. I'm being asked, why is it not A? Fair question. The reason why it would not be A, in part, is because, take a look here, reliability exists within validity, first of all. So this is one of those nestling kinds of answers. While selection ratio is what we're looking for, we're not really looking for the level of the job. We want to see this kind of evaluation for our efforts in all levels of all jobs. My pleasure. Okay, perfect. So guys, fantastic. As I switch over my slides, and forgive me, congratulations. You have finished another unit, 2 out of 5. Whew, a lot, huh? But it's a lot of fun. So I know a lot of you have already tackled your practice tests, and yet some have not yet. That's okay, no worries. But please, it's something now you are technically equipped to go and take your Unit 2 practice test. So please, by all means, go and tackle that this week. Definitely next week, because you will have some downtime to do just that. And then, yes, you'll be able to assess your performance in Unit 2. Please go back in time for good measure and take a Unit 1 practice test as well. Because remember, and we learned all about this, we're looking for consistency. I want to know that what you did a month ago, you can still do. Okay, let's dive right into Unit 3. I would love to make as much progress as humanly possible in the next 4 minutes. We start off a new unit, so remember those couple of pages that list all your responsibility points on Roman numeral pages 2, 3, and 4, just before the table of contents. See where your comfort levels are, see where some of your tears fall, and the goal is we want to get those ironed out throughout this unit. This unit is all about training, education, learning, personal development, as well as performance evaluations. So we started off talking about the business. We need to understand the business to get the people in the right place to drive the business. In Unit 2, which we just wrapped, we talked about getting the right person in the right place to do the driving of the business. Now we have to make sure that we're always working with the talent that we've invested in. So for everybody, arguably, this unit, I'm not going to say is not important. Everything clearly is important. It's not one of the more heavier units. So while, I don't want to say you can kind of be relaxed, you can kind of be a little bit more relaxed. You don't have to stress like we have, in the others thus far, and certainly going forward as well. This sits in the middle of the road. For my SHRM exam preparers, you're going to find content covering people and organization technical competencies. So we're going to be tending to those areas in your BOK. Okay, guys, training and development in an organization, our first section. What we're going to do in this section, just dive into it a little bit, itsy bitsy now. Definitely, of course, really, put the pedal to the metal to the pedal, whatever. On Thursday is, I want to take a look at how we can align, of course, again, all of those strategic goals and objectives, thinking very Unit 1, to how do we train and educate and develop our talents. We have to put back on our business hats, though, because we're going to be talking about always making sure we get a return on any investment, and always making sure as well we are weighing costs and benefits, and of course, vice versa. We will talk about ADDIE. You'll become best friends. We'll compare it to the systems model of training. What exactly is the difference? And then we will wrap up as well, talking about doing a needs analysis. How do I know who, what, when, where needs, in fact, training? It's not an easy question. Training, as a term, is when you literally work towards something specific. You may have gone through Microsoft Excel training. You may have gone through driver's training. CPR, training. Education, on the other hand, is a little bit more broad, and it's something that has a lot of reach and has a lot of extensions. So I have a question for you. Would you say that this preparations course, this program, is training or is education? What do you think? Are we training or are we education? Okay, both. Both. Education, okay? Okay? So you guys make me think. I would definitely say we are more education, because everything that we're covering, discussing, if you will, is educating in the wonderful world of human resources. I'm not training you just on how to put together a comp plan. I'm not just going to be training you on how to use PowerPoint. So I'd like to say, yes, you're being re-educated in the world of human resources. However, you guys are kind of right. I never thought of it like this. When it comes to test-taking skills, maybe it is a little bit, if you will, of training. But just when it comes to the test-taking skills, I've never actually thought of that. Can I give you guys one more? Can we just have one more slide? Or is anybody in a mad rush? Oh, I'm going to take the smart risk. I'm going to do it. I don't see anybody chiming out. So, okay, one more. I'm sorry. I just want to differentiate between explicit and tacit knowledge. Explicit knowledge is very, if you will, follow the instructions. It's very tactical. It's very formal. So if anybody, like me, loves, for example, to go to IKEA and get those like assembling, bookshelves or what have you, you love to follow the manuals and you like to go by the step by step, that's explicit knowledge. And sometimes in life we need that. However, tacit knowledge is something, and I hope I don't sound like a Kardashian, but it's something that you feel. It's not even, if you will, a knowledge. Now, often knowledge comes from our feelings, like from our experience, and you may try to portray that to somebody, but it's very hard to articulate it. So just take, for example, I have given you, you have gotten, I should say, and have followed explicit knowledge. Go to hr.com, click here, click there, click in another place, get your recording, get your course syllabus. You followed the steps, and now you've become familiar. Honestly, every single time we meet, or anytime I speak to anybody, I'm really trying to paint a picture of what that exam is going to be like. I'm trying to explain, and I will continue to, how to calm your nerves and how to take a look at the exam and what to expect and what you might feel like and what the day before is going to be like and what the day after is going to be like. But I came from experience. Now I can tell you until I burn your ears off. But the truth is, until you go through it, you might not know it. That's the difference. And yeah, definitely with tacit knowledge, we build confidence. That's the key difference. And on that note, I think I should probably wrap. Oh my gosh, again. Okay, I've got to reassess again my delivery. Alrighty, guys. So, I have a comment coming in privately, but on that note, this is where we are going to part. We are going to pick up on page 2. Whoa, page 2. Good heavens. And we are going to power through to page 38. Might not feel like a lot or look like a lot, quantitative, but believe you me, we're going to go through a lot. And we are going to go through this, even if I don't know, I'll become turbo-tongued. Any event, okay, so that's the reading assignment. We need to do this, and I'm definitely going to pick apart that course syllabus. If anybody has to sign out, please feel welcome to do so. The class is officially adjourned. Let's take a look. Hold on, guys. I'm going to read something. It came into me private, so forgive me if I, go silent, but I'm still here. Oh, that's amazing. Congrats. Okay. So I did not see it. I am so backed up, but I will look for it, and thank you. I'm sorry. It always tends to be the pattern with me. I don't know what to do other than laugh at myself. I will totally look for it. Let's see. I did have a change as well. Okay, that's fantastic. So to my classmates, sorry, I want to respect your anonymity because you messaged me privately. If you did the name change with HRCI, and which is great, please make sure you have photo ID that reflects that name change. They're going to need a matchy-matchy. Otherwise, contact them and ask them like what you do in this kind of situation. That's my advice. I would not want you to be denied entrance because your surnames did not match. Yeah, thanks for the heads up. Okay, quite a few people have been asking, and I have an answer. So anybody who had asked for the yield ratios answer key, anytime you want something like that, there's an additional charge. Now, I'm going to give you my personal bank account, and feel free to send me an e-transfer. But failing that, I'm absolutely going to be posting it. I wanted to do it like a week after. So it is going to be posted, I want to say today, but I mean probably tomorrow, but with today's session. So yeah, that is going to be available for you. Oh gosh. Okay, I'm being asked, if Trump gets impeached, should we worry? You're asking the Canadian girl. I am very worried, only because that'll impact my economy, and it really, really is in the gutter right now. I don't know. I have to be honest. The only era of potential impeachment for me was Clinton, and we all know how that worked out. So I really don't know. If he's impeached, and you're going to get a new government, which you might next year anyways, then I would suspect that, yeah, to some respect, we all be a little bit worried, because I have to be honest. And again, this is just what I see from a bird's eye view being north. But from what I see, and forgive me for injecting any personal opinion that you may not be aligned with, for whatever one might think about him and his approach or his policies or politics, the economy's good. I mean, unemployment is down. So China won't agree. But anyhow, I do worry if there's going to be a shift, if you will, in office, because that is going to, well, we talked about environmental sectors, right? It's going to impact, I think, the economics, which impacts, of course, affordability, and then it impacts, resources, including human. That's really hard to say, though. It'll make for good TV, though. I don't know. We should actually call Vladimir Putin and ask. He's the only one that knows what will happen. Sorry, I watch way too much CNN. Sorry, I should really. Okay. Being asked, did you say we don't have class next week? Yes, that is what I said. We don't have class next week. It is our mid-study break, and I think everybody needs to decompress and pause and regroup. So yes, no class next week. We'll have class on Thursday, and then nothing next week. Correct. My pleasure. Yeah, so we're right now going into elections. I think I'm 3 weeks away, and it's interesting. It's not anywhere on our news channels, or at least it doesn't cover my eyes. American politics is the only thing I see personally. But anyways, yeah, that'll be a different conversation for a different time. Really, things couldn't get much worse here, because we already pay 48% income tax. So what else? Blood. The only next thing they can tax us on really is our blood. So my pleasure. Yes, and all this commentary is free of charge. Do you think? I don't. I personally don't. What do I know, though? I really don't know anything. And I think I really, really have absolutely no insight or intel and intellect. I don't, only reason being, I think he's got a lot of supporters. It seems to be, although it seems like a very big group of left-wingers that really want to throw the book at him, honestly, they've done everything they can, and nothing sticks with this guy, whether, we want it to or not, whether it's good or it's bad, I don't know. But like whether it was Kavanaugh, like nothing that it seems like the Democrats can throw can stick. So I don't know. I don't know. I think we should sooner, just impeach Giuliani. My gut feeling is no. This guy doesn't go down for anything. He can declare bankruptcy. He could probably, I don't know, like be Green Reaper. This guy is not going down. But what do I know? Like I said, I definitely do not see as much as you do, and I don't read enough to really get a taste, and I don't have an opinion. So, yeah, we'll see. Anybody want to take any bets? Here's the thing I think, and I'll wrap up with this. By the time everything unfolds, you're going to the polls anyways. That's what I think. The timing's not impeccable. Oh well, anyhow, I'm sure you probably could have been without the Canadian input. Guys, this is where I'm going to part. I'm going to go get caught up. I don't know about that. I'm going to go get caught up on some of my emails and my workload, download those recordings, including the Coach's Corner. We'll see where the status is of last Tuesday's. Enjoy tomorrow night's session if you choose to join. If it's a little bit too advanced for your studies, no worries, because it is very Unit 5 content, but you will have the recording in case you want to back up, and just kind of have a blast from the past for when it is a little bit more relative. But don't feel rushed or pressured. If you feel overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk about employee discipline systems, not to worry. Again, it's very Unit 5 content, so you've got eons away before we can sink our teeth into that. Guys, have yourselves a fantastic night. Have a great rest of the week, and I will see you on Thursday. Night, everybody.